My name is Lily Harper, and the day I realized approval from family doesn't define you was the day I stood in my parents' Adelaide living room, clutching a letter I'd written but never sent, while my mother's voice sliced through me like a winter wind. "You're throwing your life away, Lily," she said, her eyes hard, judging my decision to quit my law firm job and pursue photography. My father sat silent, his disappointment heavier than words, while my older sister, Grace, smirked from the couch, ready to twist the knife. For years, I'd chased their approval, molded my life to fit their expectations, only to be met with criticism and comparison. But that humid December afternoon, as I walked out their door for the last time, I wasn't just leaving their judgment behind. I was rewriting my story. And when I exposed their hypocrisy to the family they cared so much about impressing, I didn't just find freedom. I found myself. I grew up in a middle-class home in Adelaide's suburbs, where success was measured in titles, salaries, and how you looked to the neighbors. My parents were high school teachers, respected, rigid, obsessed with appearances. Grace, 3 years older, was their golden child. Top of her class, married to a surgeon, living in a house with a pool. I was the dreamer, the one who'd rather sketch landscapes than study case law. But I learned early that dreams didn't count unless they came with a paycheck. "You're smart, Lily," Dad would say, "but you need to be practical. Look at Grace." I heard that comparison my whole life. Grace's grades, Grace's job, Grace's perfect life. I wanted them to be proud of me, so I tried to be her. I went to law school, graduated with honors, landed a job at a prestigious firm in Adelaide. I worked 70-hour weeks, drafting contracts, smiling at clients, pretending I didn't hate every minute. My parents bragged about our Lily the lawyer. At family gatherings, their smiles wide for the aunts and uncles. Grace would nod along, then slip in a jab. "Law's tough, isn't it, Lil? Not everyone's cut out for it." I'd laugh it off, my stomach twisting, because I knew she was right. I wasn't cut out for it. But I kept going, chasing their approval, thinking if I worked hard enough, I'd feel whole. The cracks started showing when I was 28. I'd been at the firm 4 years, burned out, my creativity buried under legal briefs. I'd sneak away to take photos, sunsets over the Adelaide hills, street markets, kids playing in the park. Photography was my escape, the one place I felt alive. I started an Instagram account, posting under a pseudonym, and it grew, first hundreds, then thousands of followers. People loved my work, left comments that made my heart sing. But when I showed my parents a photo I'd taken, a black and white of an old pier at sunrise, they barely looked. "That's nice, dear," Mum said, "but don't let it distract you from your career." Grace laughed. "Hobbies are cute, but they don't pay the bills." I swallowed the hurt, kept working, kept pretending. But the pressure was crushing me. I wasn't sleeping, my anxiety spiked, and my boss noticed my lack of focus. I confided in Grace once, hoping for sisterly support. "I'm thinking of leaving law," I said over coffee. "Photography makes me happy." She raised an eyebrow, her voice dripping with pity. "You'd give up everything for a hobby? Mum and Dad will be devastated." She told them before I could, spinning it like I was having a breakdown. They called me that night, Dad's voice heavy. "Don't throw away your future, Lily. You're not a teenager anymore." Mum added, "Think of how this looks. Grace would never do this." That was the pattern. Every choice I made was measured against Grace. Every dream weighed against their expectations. I started hiding my photography, posting late at night, afraid they'd find out. But the more I hid, the more I resented them. I wasn't living my life. I was living theirs. The breaking point came last December, after a brutal week at the firm. I'd missed a deadline, got chewed out by a partner, and went home to find an eviction notice. My landlord was selling my flat. I was exhausted, broke, and alone. I called Mum, hoping for comfort. Instead, she said, "Maybe if you'd focused on your job instead of those photos, you wouldn't be in this mess." Grace texted later. "Told you law's not for everyone. Maybe try something easier." I sat on my couch, staring at my camera, and realized they didn't love me. They loved the version of me that fit their story. That night, I wrote a letter, not to send, but to clarify my own thoughts. I poured out everything. The years of chasing their approval, The way they'd dismissed my dreams, the constant comparison to Grace. I wrote about the panic attacks, the sleepless nights, the way I'd lost myself trying to be what they wanted. The letter was 10 pages, raw and unfiltered, and when I finished, my hands were shaking, not with fear, but with clarity. I wasn't going to beg for their approval anymore. I was going to live for me. But I didn't just want to walk away. I wanted them to see what their judgment had cost me, and what it said about them. They cared about their image, about being the perfect family at reunions, church, the neighborhood. I was going to shatter that illusion, not with anger, but with truth. I started by gathering evidence. The letter was my foundation, but I needed more, proof of their hypocrisy, their favoritism, their cruelty disguised as love. I went through old texts, emails, voicemails. Mom's messages telling me to be more like Grace. Dad's silence when I'd ask for support. Grace's smug replies, like the time I'd shared a photography award I'd won, and she'd texted, "Cute. Bet it didn't pay much." I saved everything, organizing it like a case file. I also started recording conversations. Not every time, just when they'd criticize or compare. At a family dinner, I left my phone on the table, capturing Mom's lecture about wasting my potential, and Grace's laugh when I mentioned my Instagram following. "It's just social media, Lily," she said. "Not a real job." Dad added, "You need stability, not dreams." Their voices were calm, reasonable, but the words cut. I nodded, smiled, kept the recorder running. The hardest part was pretending. Every time Mom hugged me, every time Dad called me kiddo, every time Grace acted like my big sister, I wanted to scream. But I played the dutiful daughter, the overshadowed sister, because that's what kept them careless. They thought I was still chasing their approval. They didn't know I was building a case to expose them. The perfect moment was the annual Harper family reunion, held every January at a community hall in Adelaide. It was a big deal. 50 relatives plus friends, neighbors, church members. Mom and Dad loved it, showing off their successful daughters, Grace the star, me the promising one. Grace would be there with her husband, charming everyone, while I'd be expected to smile and nod. This year, I'd be doing more than nodding. I spent weeks preparing. I turned my letter into a speech, weaving in the evidence, texts, voicemails, screenshots of Grace's dismissive comments. I didn't want it to sound like a rant. I wanted it to be a story, one that showed their love was conditional, their approval a trap. I practiced in my flat, my voice steady, my words sharp. I also contacted a few cousins who'd seen their favoritism. Ellie, who'd overheard Mom praising Grace while ignoring my law degree. Tom, who'd seen Grace mock my photos at a barbecue. They gave me messages, memories, support. "You're not crazy," Ellie said over coffee. "They've always treated you like second best." The night before the reunion, I barely slept. I sat on my balcony, the city lights blurred by humidity, picturing Mom's face when I spoke, Dad's silence, Grace's smirk fading. I wasn't afraid anymore. I was ready. The reunion was loud and chaotic, the hall filled with tables of food, kids running around, aunts gossiping. Mom and Dad were in their element, greeting everyone, bragging about Grace's latest promotion. Grace floated through the crowd, her husband on her arm, her laugh carrying over the chatter. I stayed quiet, my speech folded in my pocket, my phone charged with the recordings. When Mom saw me, she hugged me and said, "You look tired, Lily. Work's stressing you out." I smiled, said something like that, and waited. The reunion always ended with speeches, family updates, toasts, memories. Dad usually spoke, but this year, I'd asked to say something, claiming it was a surprise. When the MC called my name, Grace raised an eyebrow, her lips twitching like she expected a sappy tribute. I stepped to the microphone, my heart steady, and began. "I've always been told family is everything," I said, my voice clear over the hum of the crowd. "But for years I've chased something from my family that I'll never get, approval." The room went quiet, faces curious. Mom frowned. Dad shifted in his seat. I continued. "I became a lawyer to make you proud, Mom and Dad. I worked myself to death, but it was never enough. Because I wasn't Grace." I pulled out my phone, played a clip, Mom's voice. "Be more like Grace, Lily. She's got her life together." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Grace's face went red. That's out of context, she snapped, standing. I didn't stop. I played another, Grace laughing. Photography's cute, but it's not a real job. Aunts whispered, cousins stared. I showed a text from Dad. Don't throw away your future, Lily. Then one from Grace. Maybe try something easier? For years, I thought your approval defined me, I said, looking at them. I gave up my dreams, my health, my happiness to be what you wanted. But I'm done. I'm a photographer, not a lawyer. I'm me, not Grace. And I don't need your approval to know my worth. The silence was heavy, broken only by a cousin's quiet wow. Mum tried to speak, her voice shaking. Lily, this isn't fair. But Dad put a hand on her arm, his face gray. Grace stormed out, her husband trailing behind. I set the microphone down and walked away, leaving my speech on the podium, the recording still playing. I didn't stay for the aftermath. I drove to my flat, the hall's noise fading behind me. My phone buzzed with texts, cousins saying they were proud, aunts apologizing for not seeing it sooner. Ellie called, crying. I've never seen you so strong. Mum sent a message. We need to talk, Lily. Please. I didn't reply. I wasn't ready. The fallout spread fast. The family group chat exploded, relatives debating what I'd said. Grace posted a vague Instagram story about betrayal, but the comments called her out. You compared her to you? Apologize to your sister. Mum and Dad stopped bragging at church, their perfect family image cracked. Grace's husband started asking questions, and I heard their marriage was rocky. I didn't care. They weren't my burden anymore. I quit the law firm a month later, took a leap, and started freelancing as a photographer full-time. My Instagram grew, clients booked me for weddings, portraits, even a gallery show. I moved to a new flat, one I could afford, with a balcony big enough for my herbs. My parents tried to reach out, but I set boundaries. No more comparisons, no more judgment. They're trying slowly, but it's on my terms now. Grace moved to Sydney, chasing her perfect life. But her posts are quieter, her smile less bright. I don't hate her. I don't need to. She taught me something. Family approval is a trap if it costs you yourself. I'm not chasing it anymore. I'm living for me, camera in hand, heart open, free. If you enjoyed this revenge story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment where you're watching from.